What's up, Butchie?
Feeling good, Colby. What's up, Laz?
Where you at right now?
I'm in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the Pilgrims landed, and just good to be with you guys. Heading to ESPN tomorrow. I think we have an ESPN game and an ESPN Plus game, and I'll be heading back to Bristol tomorrow.
Well, we're pumped to get you on the show here, and we've got kind of a lineup of questions for you, Butchie, about different topics trending throughout the NHL. But one place that I want to start, and we do this on our show quite often, and we take a look at our friend Jonny Laz's timeline on Twitter, and we like to look at his tweets. And Vic, I would love for you to tee up Johnny's tweet from last night, because I just want to get Butchie's reaction to this. And I'll read it to anybody who is listening in an audio-only form. And our man Jonny said last night, after falling in love with Alexis Lafreniere all over again for the 100th time this year, I'm convinced that Alexis Lafreniere will have a 100-point season in his NHL career. Now, the reason I wanted to ask you about this, Butchie, is because you are one of the people that makes predictions years you'll make a prediction that will come true in 5 years. I've seen you do that numerous times, with the NHL. What do you think of this take by our man, Jonny Lazarus?
Well, it's heavily flawed. It's not well thought out.
Nice.
To be a 100-point player, you have to either be an elite goal scorer or an elite playmaker. Matthew Tkachuk became a 100-point scorer because he's now a 65 to 70 assist guy, right? And so, because he's not going to be a consistent 50-goal scorer, Tkachuk doesn't have the skating or the shot or the speed to do that. But now he's become this elite playmaker. I think he's right there with every offensive playmaker in the NHL, whether it's Crosby, whether it's, we throw these guys off first, but Matthew Tkachuk is right there with them, the way he produces plays, completes pass, and makes passes. And obviously Lafreniere is neither an elite goal scorer or an elite playmaker.
Yes.
So if he can land in 70-point land, that would be, I think, just about the ceiling.
And his career high is what, 39 points?
I'd say he's like a 30, at best a 30 guy, right? That's, to use a baseball term. I think in some years they might go in, and some years you might have a line mate that they all go in, and you might have a career year, and you might get 75 to 80.
Which is valuable.
And it's and he might have a point per game year 1 year in the league. It could happen, but I don't quite see it yet, like you said. But hey, sometimes I sense that Jonny believes.
Well, listen, this actually kind of steers me into my first question, but Alexis Lafreniere is only 22 years old. He's still very young. He hasn't gotten any consistent first power play time, and Colby's going to give me shit because we were talking about it before, and I said, I don't know who I'd take off on the first unit, and he goes, well, that means he's not good enough to be on it. But I still disagree with that. I just can't form the sentence to beat Colby with it. He's really good with words.
Kind of I wanted to get a job you're in. So
kind of important.
Okay.
But what I wanted to get into, and it's interesting because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and I haven't really talked about it with either of you yet. But Bucci, I'm curious on your thoughts on pushing the draft age back to 19, because you look at some NHL players right now, they step in at 18 years old, and most aren't ready. And then you look at the college game, the CHL game, and yes, players dominate. But if you bring kids to an extra year of development in those leagues, it makes those two leagues better, which will essentially make the NHL better, because the younger kids are then progressing for that extra year, that when they step into the NHL, they're a little bit more developed. And then you have a player, maybe like let's say a Jack Hughes, who would have went to college for a year, and it makes college more exciting. So I'm curious to get your thought of pushing the draft age maybe back 1 year, like we see in football and basketball.
I would rather have the player and the team make the smart decision. Jack Hughes should have played college. He didn't, but he could have. I think looking back, he should have went to Michigan like his brothers did, but he chose not to. Some 18-year-olds are ready. Sidney Crosby, began his NHL career in an awesome way as an 18-year-old, just turned 18 a couple months before, being an August birthday. So, I just really like to have the player and have that option, the team have that option, and just hopefully they're smart about it. And they're not always smart about it, like you said, but yeah, I don't like having those kinds of restrictions. There's different cases, and I just hope they make the right one when it comes up. They don't always, but I'd rather see them do that, because like you said, very few do it, and they should, and very few should do it. But there's a time where a team and a player might want to do that.
Colby, I'm curious on your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, Jonny, I don't think it's a terrible, terrible thought, but I tend to side with Butchie on the fact that I'm more of a free market type of guy. Let people make decisions for themselves. I don't think it's our job to police anything and everything. And I like the fact that, players have different alleyways and different options. And these are all things you have to weigh when deciding, do I want to go college, major, junior? Am I ready? Can I be in an American leaguer? I do think ultimately something that has to happen is the NHL and the CHL and the NCAA need to get at a table and figure some shit out. I do think that that's something that needs to happen. And I think part of that has to happen because you see these kids who aren't old and they're not able to go play in the American League from juniors, but they can play in the American League from college. And there's a lot of discrepancies. And I think you're forcing people at such a young age to pick a path that, you're not necessarily ready to pick. But again, I don't think it's the worst question you ever asked, Jonny. So I won't get all over you for it. But I am a free market. I'm a free market type of guy with most of the way that I look at things.
But I also think that, the popularity of college football and college basketball, a lot of it is also because these stars are, they're playing a year of college, or, I know we have the OHL, CHL, WHL, all that mixed in here too, but I kind of want to focus on college as well. Like, a lot of the fans know who these players are leading into the draft, where I feel like sometimes in the NHL, players are getting drafted and they hadn't played in college. They haven't really been on that bigger platform. So fans aren't really, as recognized with them, if that makes sense. Like, I think that's so big too. And we've noticed it with Connor Bedard this year. There's been so much hype around this NHL season because there was so much attention toward Connor Bedard, where maybe, that extra year, there's more media attention on these kids. If they do go to college for 1 year, it just makes the game a little bit more popular. That's kind of the angle I was thinking as well.
Yeah, well, college basketball has that problem. That seems to be a sport that's they don't have that. Like you said, I can't name 2 college basketball players right now on the men's side. I can name more women than I can men, because again, a lot of these guys, yeah, it's just, and that's bad for the sport, right? That's not good for college basketball. But I think Lafreniere's issue too is more he was a COVID draft pick, and all those kids obviously were penalized by the decisions, by the decisions were made for people about COVID. They were hurt more than anybody, especially kids in college. And he was one of those kids that their development was all stunted, whether it's, certainly we've seen the data for schools and kids who couldn't go to school, but also those athletes, especially professional high-level athletes who were drafted or during the COVID time. That really hurt them a lot. Their development was probably stunted. Who knows? Maybe stunted for life, maybe. Or like you said, Jonny, maybe it'll be delayed a bit, and maybe we haven't seen the best out of them yet because they didn't have that same development path that most had at a very important age. So we'll give him a little bit of break there, and we'll see if he can maybe, turn into a Chris Kreider over time, right? Like when he's 28 years old, he figure out, okay, if I go here more often, if I do this more often, then maybe he can have a slow peak and have a couple years, like you said, where he could be maybe a 35, 45 guy. But 100, man, that is 100 points. A lot of points. That takes a special player to get there. And hey, but I like your belief.
My takes aren't normally good, Bucci. So
no, you got to stand by your beliefs. You got to stand by your takes. That's more important than being right. You got to believe it.
Butchie, I think this conversation has gone in a way where I want to ask you this question, something we've already talked about, and it's been a little bit of a hot button topic lately, but where do you stand as a guy who has, been one of the face of college hockey with Barry Melrose now for so long? What do you think about this whole NCAA CHL thing? Do you think players should be able to play a couple years in the CHL and then as an 18-year-old go play at a Division I university? How do you feel about that conversation?
I mean, it seems like a reasonable thing to me. Will some people try to take advantage of it? Yeah, it happens in all walks of life, or someone's going to take advantage of it. And and not ruin it, but you know what I mean. And so, but it seems like it's not, some things in life are just not that hard to try to figure out. And again, especially when you're dealing with young people. And in the same side, we have to have standards. We have to have, rules, and we have to have some organization. It can't be a free for all. We do have to take into consideration other things like the economy and jobs and things like that. But for the most part, this is a small issue. It's a small amount of elite hockey players. It's a small amount of junior teams in the grand scheme. And so we should be able to figure out what's best for the kid. And if a kid wants to change his mind, change course, and go get a degree, get a scholarship in America, get that degree, realize, I guess that's probably the better decision. I think that seems like a pretty reasonable thing. And it shouldn't be hard to figure out.
I'm with you on it. I think it's completely reasonable, and calling these guys, saying they're not amateurs because they make a couple $100 a month when players are getting thousands and thousands of dollars in costs of attendance and Alston money doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
Look, the chat right now on YouTube is super active. And so I want to get to a couple people. Dave Singer, our guy Singsy, who's well known for being a celebrity in these walks of life. Butchie, he wants to know, do you think that Nemec is the best player from his draft after what we've seen from him over the past, the recent stretch in Jersey?
I think it's arguable that if they redrafted, he might go one. I just love every part of his game. Being right-handed, he's got a huge amount of compete. At times he's kind of he's an angry guy. I like guys who play angry. Elite passer, just playmaking, hockey sense. All the hockey, we don't hear the word hockey sense anymore, but we grew up with it, and it's just those guys who just know what's going around them better than everybody else. And he's one of those guys. And being, again, right-handed, power play quarterback. So I think if I had to redraft that year, as of right now, I would probably take him one. Cooley's right there. I'm just worried about Cooley's size in the playoffs. That's my only little concern for him. Not a big deal, but he's electric at times and still really young. I wish he'd gone back to college just for a few more months. And that's always, I always say, you're not going back to college for another year. You're going back for 5 months, and then you turn pro in March, like Kel McCarr did. And then that's how, as an agent and a hockey and an NCAA coach, I would frame it to them. We want you not to come back for another year. We want you to come back for 5 months. And after the summer, come back here and then go turn pro next March. But yeah, I do love him that much.
I mean, New Jersey needs him to step up too if they're going to make a push here, because it's been a crazy emotional year for the Devils, just so below expectation. I mean, what are your thoughts on the Devils this year? It actually sucks for the area because it's way more fun around here when the Devils are good.
Yeah,
last night was a disappointing loss too. I mean, that was a really bad loss last night.
No, for sure. I mean, the league is so tight. You never know. They could win 8 games in a row starting with their next game. Like, that can happen. The league is so tight with the salary cap not moving for 3-4 years. It's more even than it's ever been. So you're going to have these situations where a team looks like they suck and they're not trying, and then they turn around and win 8 in a row. It's really interesting. But they got nailed with injuries. They haven't figured out the goalie. Goalie's tough. Edmonton went through it after they signed Campbell, and then they imploded. Now Skinner's playing out of his mind. And so, even Shesterkin hasn't been good, but thankfully they had Jonathan Quick. What if they didn't have Jonathan Quick? Where would the Rangers maybe be? So goalie it's like middle relief in baseball. You never know when it's going to be good from year to year. Suddenly your team has a great middle relief core, and then some years they don't. But the Devils, with all those injuries, but now they got to figure it out and somehow try to figure it out. But it could be one of those lost years and you come back next year. But I wouldn't count anybody out yet because, like I said, it's so even, and anybody's a step away from a long win streak that gets them right back up.
The minute Jonny gave Nico Dawes the vote of approval or the stamp of approval, he goes out and lays an actual egg last night. He had like a 750 save percentage last night in that game. And look, what you're talking about, Butchie, is exactly why Don Sweeney should just hang up the phone if people call about Linus Ullmark, because you've got the best thing going for your team is that position. And it's the one position that everyone else in the league, for the most part, other than 7 or 8 teams, is coveting and dying for. So that's why I just think it makes the Ullmark Swayman tandem just so much more valuable, and something that they should do everything and anything to keep intact as long as they possibly can.
Agree. Yeah. If you're a serious cup contender, you really need to have two goalies. Otherwise, you're one injury away. You're one cold goalie away. And yeah, to have that, what a luxury. It's, obviously it's been the best tandem for that team who, let's face it, outside of Pasternak, there's, Marchand still is a really good player. He's not quite where he was. He's dipped a hair. But it's amazing how those two guys keep it together. I mean, obviously McAvoy in my mind is just so much better than your average hockey fan thinks.
He's so good.
His one-on-one defense, what he's producing this year offensively, he's taken a step up. He's there with McCarr and Fox and all. He was in my top three Norris last year. Unbelievable.
He makes so many plays through the neutral zone that if he might end up with the third assist on, but these are plays where he brings and calls so much attention to himself that by the time he moves the puck to, you name the forward, they're in such a good position to attack the offensive blue line. And it just makes all the world of a difference for a hockey team in the flow of that they're ready to play and can play at when you have a 25, 27 minute a night, thoroughbred back there who, not to mention, will run you over in the process. I mean, to me, he's one of the players in the NHL that's worth going and buying a ticket and my money is good to go watch that guy play hockey. He's that talented.
Yeah, he's unique for sure.
I said a couple shows ago, if I'm starting the playoffs tomorrow after Cale Makar, the next defenseman in the NHL I want on my team is Charlie McAvoy. I said that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the data on his breakout ability this year is unbelievable. The ability to start a breakout. Colby mentioned the physical aspect. He's now starting to fight. I always couldn't understand why he didn't score more, to have more of a hunger to score. And he's like an extra center as a defenseman when he gets in the zone as well. Just his beautiful vision. In fact, I've tweeted, I would put him as a forward on the power play a lot of times. I think when Lindholm was going Lindholm's been very average now offensively. Yeah. He's brutal. But when he was going as a power play guy, you could have him out there and have Charlie be a forward, especially. Yeah. But we know we go 4-1 now with forwards, and since that's why we've had this historical climb with the power play percentage. As you know, remember when the first few teams went 4 forwards and 1 D, and it was a kind of a topic. You sacrifice defense, and then as people realize that's the way it is. So funny to see those things with coaching, how it takes time, and now everybody does it, and that's why we have these incredible power play percentages now. Like the other night, I had the Red Wings Seattle game in Seattle on Monday, and Seattle has a 20% power play, 21% power play. That's like top 3 8, 9, 10 years ago. Now they're 17th. So it's still a good power play. 1 out of 5 is good. But yeah, that shows where we've gone. But yeah, McAvoy does it all, and he's a top 3 NHL defenseman all around.
It's kind of like how everybody goes for the empty net now. 10, 15 years ago,
I always said that. Shoot it. That always made sense to me as a little kid. Shoot it, because you win. If it goes in,
you did that and it didn't go in, you couldn't even look towards the bench because the daggers you would be getting from your teammates and the coaching staff, forget about it. And now everybody goes for it, and we see all these empty net goals happening. So
Igor Shesterkin went for it in a 1-goal game. The goalie.
Well, he's Russian. You never know what those guys are going to do. Yeah, you never know what those guys are going to do.
Still, Lavi loved it, though. I asked Lavi about it after. He loved it. He was all for it.
We're talking Charlie McAvoy. We're talking Nemec. So we're talking defense. And it kind of takes me to a point that or a topic that I want to pick your brain about here, Butchie, and it's the Calder Trophy. And my lead in talking about defense probably tips my hand as to why and who I've got on my mind here. But let me ask you a question right now. If you're voting for the Calder Trophy today, Butchie, who's number 1 on your ballot?
I've had a vote the last 2 years and all the big awards. It's been really cool. Didn't expect it, but so that's been really fun, and I take it seriously. And that's one of those ones where I probably have to really have to sit down because obviously the default position is Bedard because he is obviously going to go down as the best player of the class, but that's not the award. What the award is about is who's going to be the best player and who's going to be the Lock Hall of Famer, and probably he's probably going to be a 600 goal scorer. That'd be my over-under sitting here right now. I'd say 600, and that's a big number. So to have to look at, obviously you're talking about Brock Faber and what he's done, what he's meant.
25.05 a night, 33 points. He might have had, I didn't look today. This is something we talked about on Daily Faceoff Live yesterday with Frank Saravalli. 25.05 playing against the other team's best players. He's got an even rating. He's got a team surging towards the playoffs, although they had a bad loss last night.
Yeah.
And he's got 33 points as a first-year defenseman in the NHL. And to me, with Bedard missing all that time, I think right now, I think Faber is slightly ahead of Bedard. Now, I think Bedard could catch him. I mean, look what he's already doing since he got back.
Right.
But you can't I don't think you can write Brock Faber off. I'm just so impressed with what we've seen from the first-year NHL defenseman.
Now,
Even the playoffs last year.
Yeah, that's fair to say he's slightly ahead right now. That'd be fair to say because of the time missed by Bedard. And again, for a while there, Bedard, his offense kind of did dip for a while as teams were focusing on him because 2 points matter for every team in the league. When you have more teams in, they're going to scout the Blackhawks and really try to beat them. Maybe even pay more attention to them because those 2 points are so valuable for so many teams with a lot of teams in it. So like you said, though, he's got 28 games to go or so, 27, 28 games. So if he scorches and he gets his 16 goals and he gets, 19 assists and he's 35 points in 28 games, maybe he jumps back up in front. But I think it's reasonable to say that Faber is at least even and maybe just a bit ahead right now in this. Obviously, it's a full 82, but that's reasonable for sure for the numbers you said as a defenseman in this league.
When it comes down to it, though, can they really not give it to Bedard if it's like almost that even? I mean, I feel like just for the NHL, like they're going to have to vote it.
Well, it's not a
People
PR
vote.
award, and people like me vote. Media people vote on it, and so it's going to become what they think. And a lot of them take it very seriously. They do use numbers, and they do try to make it who deserves it, not a PR thing. And in fact, I think that sometimes hurts people like Connor McDavid, who wins it every year. Sometimes he gets overshadowed by people who do one particular thing really well or whatever. And these last 2 years, I voted for McDavid both times because I'm not going to be with that guy who, 10 years from now, you look back and say, how didn't that guy win the MVP with those numbers? Well, people were kind of tired of voting for him. They wanted to see somebody else win. And that's not what the award is. So, yeah, in the end, I know what you mean, Johnny, because to have him at the award ceremony with that picture, the league would like that. There's no doubt about it. But people who vote for it don't think that way.
Yeah. I actually, Johnny, I said that to Frank yesterday. I said, even though I think Faber's ahead right now, I think right now Bedard would still win because of the name recognition. And Frank got, he disagreed with me, very strongly disagreed with that sentiment. I assume he is one of the people that votes as well. And he strongly disagreed with that sentiment. But it was a question that I proposed for the exact reasons that you two are talking about.
Yeah,
Frank's got a big voice in that matter, and he's he takes that seriously, like you said, and I think he's setting the tone for the voters as well to say, this is not what this award is about. We don't work for the NHL. We're not a PR arm of the NHL. We all love hockey, but we're not a PR arm of the NHL, and we're going to vote who deserves the award. I mean, as hockey people, we know we believe in the meritocracy. The best players play more, and so that should go into all walks of hockey, whether you're a fair journalist, whether you're a voter, or whatever. And Frank is the quarterback when it comes to that voting. And with the writers and the association. So he takes that seriously.
In the chat right now, there's people that are really weighing in on this topic, and there's definitely the Faber is barely a positive plus minus anymore, which is what his largest selling point was. And I don't necessarily agree that is the deciding factor, because plus minus is somewhat of a team stat as well. And look, I do think though, if the Minnesota Wild make the playoffs and find their way into the playoffs, again, it's going to be hard. And this is a comment from somebody 2001 Lex, it's going to be hard to vote against Faber because he's playing 25.05 a night. That's got to be up there with the highest ice time in the entire league. And just the responsibility that comes with that when you're matching up against the McKinnon's line and McDavid's line, and that's big time for a defenseman, Johnny.
No, for sure. No doubt about it. And he got the power play point time for a while too, so that ascended his argument. Like you said, if they make the playoffs, that will help. He needs a lot to go right for him. He's a great one-on-one defender, like McAvoy. As a defenseman, he could play like a good basketball player. We can see that. People don't always see how good a one-on-one hockey player is, but he's one of those guys who can shut down a guy coming down the wing. So there's a lot there, but there is still time. and we'll find out.
Bucci, I do want to shift gears a little bit because, a couple weeks ago, you did host the NHL All-Star Draft. You've interviewed so many incredible NHL players and personalities, but I'm curious if there's one player in the league who maybe doesn't get as much recognition for who they are as a person, someone who's really enjoyable and fun to talk to that you've experienced that should have more attention to them, just as a really cool dude.
Boy, there's so much access nowadays with social media and the social teams that the teams do themselves and the league does themselves. And so I think it's hard to not notice everybody. So I don't really think anybody's that too under the weeds right now in terms of personality and things like that. Like, there's always some blind spots, I guess, some guys you don't see or you discover late. But overall, we do an amazing job. The players can do it themselves. Like I said, the social teams of each individual teams do a great job with these mechanisms, all the things we see in the Jumbotron, where they ask these guys questions, a series of questions, a montage of players. I think the NHL does a phenomenal job of creating that intimate atmosphere for teams to get to know players, get to know their personalities. And hey, there's some late bloomers, that's for sure. But obviously, people like David Pastrnak, who are just such naturals and such a likability. I guess you keep searching for those guys and keep trying to coach them up a little bit. But right now, no one really comes to mind as being, in the weeds.
Okay, maybe I can just shift it and say, at that All-Star Draft, who did you hang out with most or have fun with most that specific night?
Yeah,
Probably me.
Yeah, of course.
That was a good dinner.
The sushi was amazing.
Yeah.
But just I guess, that everyone was really engaged that draft night. That's what I was really happy about. And when I would go over from podium to podium and look, Connor McDavid in the eye and Nathan McKinnon in the eye, and they were there. Like, they were really present and they were humble and they were, I think, really happy to be a part of it. They really did give themselves as much as they could. Leon Draisaitl, actually, to go back to your original question, Leon's got a lot of game. He's snarky, he's angry, he's funny. So Draisaitl, he could be an interesting guy to watch going forward. If he's 1 year left on his deal next year, I got to think and I assume Edmonton's going to go and offer him an 8-year extension. And if he says no, that means I might want to go somewhere else. And that'll be interesting to see if he ends up in a big market in the U.S., a Chicago, a New York, something like that. And if he could really break through forward as a personality, someone who's sneaky funny and could be really, really maybe elevate himself that way. But all the players were awesome there. Really enjoyed it, get to know them, and so it was a good weekend, and I really do think the league is blessed.
Well, Butchie, we got a couple of good comments in the chat. I want to read to you. One of our most avid listeners to all the Daily Faceoff platforms, Jeremiah, who we didn't see the last couple of days, and we were worried about him.
He's in Miami. He said he's in Miami.
I know.
Right now.
But he was traveling. He lives in Alaska, so he's up at 4 a.m. watching the show, listening to the show, and he said, Colby, just tell Butchie he's my hero for the Barry Melrose stuff and for keeping hockey alive at ESPN with Linda, Levy, and Barry. And, I this isn't the last thing I want to talk about today, because I do want to get into the Columbus Blue Jackets situation, because I think you've got some pretty interesting points to make on that. But I do want to talk about Barry and the Melrose T-shirts, and where the money's going for that, and just how much Barry has meant to all of us, but you personally, because I've got to sit, in the back seat and watch it over the last 6 years, and it's been honestly one of the greatest joys for me in hockey and broadcasting.
Yeah, that's just such a great image right there. I always said you don't use his eyes or nose or ears, yet it's Barry Melrose. That's when you're an icon. And so I started working with Barry in 1998. And, we back in the NHL Tonight days, and then we started doing college hockey about 2006. So that's been about, 17, 18 years doing regionals, and our first Frozen Four in 2013. And then you came along as well, Colby. And it was always this great Frozen Four dinners for us to go out with our team. And so it's just sad and heartbreaking that he can no longer do it. He was such a witty guy with an amazing fast brain, and of all things to get, it's Parkinson's. So just wanted to do something. And so we came up with these T-shirts that people are now starting to get and tweet out, which I appreciate. And I knew it would be such a surge of T-shirts. I kind of outsourced it. Usually I have stuff come to my house, put it in my attic and mail it myself. I knew this would be too much. And sure enough, there's, I think we're up to like $20,000 already that they say about in sales that they've sold. And going forward, I got some ball markers coming, some poker chip ball markers with that image. They should arrive next week. I think I'll take over the T-shirt now. I think as the original surge ends, I think I'm going to make some white T-shirts for the summer. And so just want to kind of keep it going. My goal is just to do it all year. And then at the end of the year, present a check or amount of money or wire money to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, who's also obviously with Parkinson's, a fellow Canadian. One of the guys I was able to get someone to reach out to Michael, and he was able to call Barry 2 days after he told me of his diagnosis a couple of years ago. So yeah, that's just the idea. Just not to forget him, keep him out there. Not that he cares. He doesn't have that kind of ego. He doesn't really have he's not that kind of guy. He just wants to, be around hockey people and have fun. And that's why we were attracted to him because of that.
Yeah.
Because of that.
I've just never seen a guy who is willing to give his time so generously to every human being who walks up to him on the street. And he's the best. He really is. I mean,
just a farm boy. He's just a farm boy from Saskatchewan. So every day he woke up, he knew he's the luckiest guy in the world. They got to coach Wayne Gretzky. Oh. They got to be on TV for 25.
And those guys love him. I mean, you ask Wayne about him. You ask Tony Granato about him. Like, you ask a lot of these legends about him, and their faces light up with excitement because they can't wait to talk about Barry. And I think that is that is one of the true tell signs. So assistmelrose.com is where you can buy the shirts. And keep an eye on when they're restocked, and then they'll move over to Bucciot.com at a certain point.
Thank you.
So one of my favorite things to talk about is Barry. So the last thing I got for you, Butchie, is the Columbus Blue Jackets. And we on this show, we like to talk about how great their fan base is and how this is a place that players want to go and play, and how the fans of Columbus deserve a management team and a coaching staff that's going to put a clear plan in place and direct this franchise to being relevant. And look, right now they're kind of a joke. They really are. What they've become is a punchline and a disappointment. The Babcock thing, the way they're managing their young players, it does not make sense to me at all. Now, you said something on social media about Ken Holland, a guy who you know quite well. And I just want to kind of ask you, what do they need to do? Because these fans of Columbus deserve more.
Well, they've tried. Let's face it. They have definitely tried. When the Johnny Gaudreau thing happened, looking back, it's probably maybe not the best thing for team building, but how do you say no to a guy who just had 100 points? We just talked about it. We began this discussion with 100-point scores, how difficult that is. And so you can see why that's how do you say no to that? But it probably where they were going, looking back, probably not the best thing for either person, probably. And I don't know if that's going to be rectified this summer. If they can figure out a way, Johnny goes to a winning team, or maybe he just wants to wait it out, and maybe they want to have him there. We'll see. But so they've tried, no doubt about it. They've been aggressive. It's the fastest growing city in Ohio still. It's really becoming a big league city. They're still just the only big thing in town, although obviously Ohio State football is as big as an NFL team practically. So they still have that place pretty much all to themselves. So what they need obviously first is now a change. They need a restart. They need to start over again with fresh faces. And like I said, they have tried. And they have some good stuff in the guts of the organization. They have a name like Rick Nash and a reputation. Chris Clark, former NHL player, is a guy there in the weeds.
Former teammate of mine. I loved playing with Clarkie.
Chris is just one of those salt of the earth guys that could be a GM one day, and he's right there helping, with the monsters, and he's in that organization. So yeah, I just think someone like Kenny Holland, and he wouldn't be a day-to-day GM anymore. Just a guy what Jim Rutherford did in Vancouver. Let's just get a guy who's seen it all, done it all. They were both goalies. They both played in the NHL. Rutherford more than Holland. Kenny began as a scout, then the head of scouting for Detroit. He was around Scotty Bowman and team building. We saw what Bowman did for the St. Louis Blues when they became an expansion team. They were going to the finals every year. They were the best of these expansion teams when all the expansion teams were in one conference for the first couple of years. And when you won that, you played the NHL, and you lost to the Bruins and the Canadians and things like that. But then he obviously went to Montreal. And then, so Scotty Bowman knows how to build teams. He knows how to direct teams. And Kenny was there for all of that too. And so he has a huge amount of reputation around the league with other GMs. They kind of look up to him. And so just to bring him in to kind of look at the organization and figure out the offices, figure out how we doing this, how we doing that. And then he can have one of these young GMs, whether it's a Darch or whether it's, Sean Horkoff or whether it's Greeley. There's all kinds of great names.
Greeley, yeah, great name.
Yeah, he was, he was up for the Penguins job before Kyle Dubas sailed in on his 9-year contract or whatever, 7-year contract plane. So there's all kinds of guys like that.
I hope he's got a lot of guarantees on that contract.
Exactly. So, I just think someone like Kenny would just be a guy that can come in, and he's just a grinder too. He's a hockey grinder, and something like that for that organization. The owner, that's the thing. The owner lets the guys do their things. That could be good. That can be bad. He's not really involved, but he's very supportive, and he's kind of quiet. So, it's going to be and so maybe stuff got away from him a little bit. So it's tough. But like I say, John Davidson certainly has been in hockey for a million years. He knows everybody. I'm surprised that he's part of the GM process again, quite frankly. But again, maybe they say, hey, if I was going to hire one of these job companies who goes find a search firm, he'd probably be a pretty good guy to have because he can get to everybody. So, but in terms of who makes that decision in the end, who's going to make that decision to hire a GM? Is it going to still be JD? So, so that's the thing. So that would take that's why kind of getting that out there with Holland and some name like that, what Jim Rutherford did in Vancouver, then as a, president or whatever title. I don't think Kenny cares about a title. I don't think most people don't care about a title, but some teams have presidents, some teams have VPs. Pat Verbeek does both in Anaheim. They don't have a hockey president. They have a business president, where Neely is is president in Boston, kind of sets the tone with his personality and okay, what are we doing here? In terms of making it work to make that machine continually be consistent. And that's what they need in Columbus right now. But they got a lot of good stuff, but this is a pretty important time. How do we bring it together and going forward and have really one unified voice of team building? Here's what we need in this organization to be a good hockey team and make sense on the ice going forward.
And it's a really attractive job to get because it can't get much worse for them right now. And they have so much young talent in the organization already.
Oh, absolutely.
It's only going to be a positive, right? So I got to imagine that there's everyone, hounding for that job right now.
No doubt.
It's going to be, quite the turnaround in Columbus too. We've seen what it's like when they're successful, like Colby said before. But Bucci, I have one more for you. And I think we talked about it at dinner a little bit, but, as a fan, the Frozen Frenzy Day was one of my favorite days of the year. I think you did an incredible job with it. I'm curious if there's more conversations about it happening again at all this season, or maybe where it could possibly be in the future if it's going to be something that continues in the NHL.
Yeah, I think I heard some murmurs around our offices that they were going to do it again later in the year. On one of those days where there's at least 13, 14, 15 games. I'm not sure if there's another day where everyone plays again. I thought it was just 2. I think we're done with that, but there could be a game with 13 or 14 teams or games going on. That would certainly be enough. So yeah, that was a great day for hockey this year. It's very memorable. It's everywhere I go. It happened again in Seattle. Someone came up to me and said, man, I love that Frozen Frenzy. That was now 4 months ago. It was a little while ago, but that's the impact it made. And when you can make an impact in the media world, because there's so much of it now, then you've done something. And, it was really cool. It was great to be a part of it. Whether we can, like you mentioned, can we do it once a month? Can we really make this a thing and really brand it and sell it and help the league and to give it some juice on a more consistent basis or do it more often? We'll see going forward, but I think there's a window there for sure if you can sell it and it makes economic sense for these networks.
Well, I feel like also once NFL season ends, if you schedule games like that on Sundays, I feel like, right, that's the best.
Staggered times. I think the staggered times were brilliant, and that's always the thing that frustrates me the most during the regular season is your every game is in intermission at the same time. So if you watch the first period of one game, I wish they could, even if they did like it in 8-minute increments, just so you at least once the game that starts the earliest goes to first intermission, you can catch the last 5 or 7 minutes of another game and then roll that along throughout the night. And that was my favorite part of it. And for those of you who aren't sure exactly what we're talking about, Bucci hosted the Frozen Frenzy at ESPN. Every team played. The game times were staggered. They moved from game to game. They showed the goals, the power plays, the big plays. It was a whole day of hockey, and it was incredible. Just to refresh people's memories, Jonny, of for our listeners.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Yeah,
it was
for sure.
8 hours of commercial-free hockey.
It seems pretty easy, just even like you said, Colby, even if you played at 7:35, 7:36, 7:38, 7:40, 7:45 on those nights where we have 8 7:30 games or 8 7 o'clock games. Obviously, the league and the owners don't see value in that yet, because they want the best time for their season ticket base and their window of attendance. I get that. But hopefully over time, they'll see the value in that. And if that can create a mechanism on it, you can't do it with 3 games. It's tough with 5 games. But anytime you have double-digit games, you could do some sort of frenzy, like you said. And I don't know. That's a good point, Jonny, in terms of like, do we stack Sundays once football is over? And do we try that from 1 o'clock right up until 7? Is Saturday better because it's not a school night or a work night? It's an interesting concept to think, and I've always been about thinking out of the box like that and trying things. Whether it's not even shifting the whole season and make it a summer sport. Like there's all kinds of things you can really think about, and that's the thing. Football is such a mammoth eater of content. You want to try to avoid the big monster whenever you can. As you run your business, as you have to, because let's face it, hockey's an 8-month business, so you're going to hit football at some point. From training camp to from the opening night to when the cup goes in the air is 8 months. We're only halfway through right now. So it's 8 months to do that. And if you add camp, it's 9 months. So you're going to hit football at some point. It's just, when do you want to hit it?
Well, we're going to finish with a college hockey question from
I have one
Neil
more point,
Foddy.
though, Colby. I have one more point.
Go ahead.
Just about that. Because that's the thing with NFL Red Zone is that it owns the day. Everyone looks forward to Sunday because the NFL owns that day, where if there is a schedule in advance for the Frozen Frenzy where there is, no other day like that. Our producer's giving me shit that I'm an ideas guy, but I feel like Bucci's an ideas guy. Bucci's an ideas guy too, though. No,
Bucci's a good ideas guy.
I'm not an executor, but I'm an ideas guy. But you know what I mean? That's what makes NFL Red Zone so great, because they own that day. So if there was a schedule in advance, here's the Frozen Frenzy on this Sunday after NFL season's over, or this Tuesday, it's just that's a way to own the day. And I think that's what made it.
I agree. That's a good take. I like the take. Quality take.
All right.
I won't say another word while you're on here.
As we let you go here, Bucci, the last comment in the chat that I want to hit you with from Neil Foddy. Bucci, who do you think will make the Frozen Four, and does Wisconsin have a chance this season?
Yeah, they have the coach, the defense, the goalie certainly to do it. Tournament hockey, to go to a different place and win those 2 games over 3 days in front of sometimes not a big crowd, where you have to generate your own intensity. And there's no doubt they can. It's going to be, it's always hard to pick the 4 for sure. I think BU or BC will probably be there. One of them will probably be there. It'd be nice if both of them were, because they're star-studded. There's future NHL players on there. Going back to what Jonny talked about, people know these guys, and it's going to help the draft. It's going to help us to have guys who are going to be in the league next year. So having a BU, BC, and so why not? Let's have both of them making it. And then out west, I think Wisconsin is certainly right there, because again, they have that defensive mentality where they'll beat the offensive run and gun teams. And Denver's having a hard time keeping the puck out of the net. They have an amazing offense situation, but so if they can figure it out, they're one of those teams, but I'm not sure. I think North Dakota has a bit of a destiny to them. They don't have the high-end NHL talent they've had in the past, but I think there's something about their destiny. I think North Dakota makes it. And then
Jackson Blake is legit. He can carry his team.
He is. And so I kind of like that. They're almost like a blue-collar North Dakota team right now, which probably almost suits them better. A lot of teams, it probably suits them better. And so, we'll give those three legendary programs, and then one surprising, let's say the Badgers. I think Wisconsin's a reasonable team to take.
Look, you never count out Mike Hastings in those types of environments where you can lock it down in the neutral zone and make it miserable on a bunch of 18-year-old star forwards.
Yeah, but it'll be them or Michigan State. Yeah, I would. Michigan State, it's a great renaissance. What a program it was back in the day. They have Trey Augustine, the future Red Wing goalie, in that. He's unbelievable. They're well coached, and so it'll probably be the Michigan State, Wisconsin, one of those two. And right now, he'd probably give a slight edge to Michigan State. But again,
Yeah,
there's
they're
something
on
about Mike Hastings' team in the tournament. He knows how to do it.
Michigan State's on fire right now.
They are. They're loaded.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
All right, Butchie. Well, look,
yeah.
we could probably do this with you for 3 straight hours, and we've probably taken way more time than I asked you for. So we appreciate it.
Then you'd
We'll
have
be
to pay me.
Well, listen, first dinner in Federal Hill on me.
Sounds
on
good.
me, buddy.
Can't wait
On
for
me.
that.
We'll be watching you on ESPN. What you said tomorrow? You got 2 games tomorrow, right?
So I think we have a Capital Lightning game on ESPN, and then a Kings game, and then my next game I'm doing is in Columbus, actually, to go do a Blue Jacket game against the Hurricanes on the 29th, the extra day of the year this year. It's a leap year, so we have a game on the 29th. So I'll be in Columbus there, seeing what's going on and seeing what's up then. Maybe they have some announcements by then. We'll see. It'd be very interesting to be around there. And then, and then the stretch drive is here. March is here. Got a couple games. Got a Panther Lightning game in Florida. Then I'll be with Colby. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's like a 6 o'clock ESPN game, one of those Saturday games we talked about. And then, of course, you and me will be in Providence for the regional. I'm looking forward to that. And then it's just amazing. I go to the Columbus game, and I come back, it's March. And then suddenly after we do Providence, it's going to be April. And then, bam, it's, Frozen Four, Stanley Cup playoffs. March and April are the 2 best hockey months. I love them. Yes. So this is it. This is to me, this is New Year's Day, and now we're getting going. This is the good stuff for the next 4 months.
Oh, yeah, we got to ramp it up.
You can hear the excitement. That's why you're the hockey guy, Butchie, because you truly love the sport. So thank you. Good seeing your face, bud. Sure, we'll talk. And thanks
Cody
for coming
Johnson.
on.
Go see Cody Johnson in concert. He's a country music guy who's got tons of energy. And if you're looking for something to do, good date night, go to a Cody Johnson concert. He's like he's like a Garth
You hear
Brooks.
That, Johnny? Good date night. Johnny's
go,
always
John.
looking for good date nights.
Yeah.
Thanks, Butchie.
All right,
appreciate your time.
You're the best.
Peace.